30 years ago, I started student teaching. I remember that day. I walked into the classroom, I had all my lessons planned, and I stood in front of the group and I just started sweating. I stuttered, I read from my slides, and I fought through the day. At the end of that day, I was pretty much freaked out. But the next day, things came a little bit easier. This is my first time teaching not in a classroom, not to a group of students. As a matter of fact, we're sitting here in my son's bedroom, but I still got me and my whiteboard. But my goal is still the same, to do something that leaves an impact. When I was a teacher, I thought I could make a difference. I thought I could make a difference coming into the classroom and teaching anything and everything I could to the best of my ability to inspire my students. My degree was in biology, but I also taught anatomy and survival and leadership and economics. But when I was in the classroom, my goal was just to get them to pay attention. And of course, we look at kids and we think, oh, they don't care, they don't want to pay attention. But the truth is this, is if I could deliver something that was meaningful, they would pay attention. And not only would they pay attention, they would learn. But learn what was the question? What was I teaching them that was relevant to them? There was supply and demand or photosynthesis. These things could be pertinent for their knowledge in their future. But the question really was like, what did this have to do with them in their life? And to the side, certain kids would come up and be like, well, how do I apply this to my life? And where am I going to go next? And I want to be successful, or I just want to move on and do something important with my life. And I wanted that for them too. I just didn't know where to find that in my curriculum or in the standard curriculum delivered by, the state or by the government. But there was one lesson that over time that began to develop, a simple lesson. And I would find that I would come back to that lesson one-on-one or in small groups with students over and over again when they asked me, how do they change and how do they go to their future? Unfortunately, the title of that lesson is pretty rough. Now, I wouldn't swear to my students, but I'm going to assume we're all adults here, and so I'm going to swear a little bit. I taught for 20, 25 years, and I wasn't allowed to swear, but today, those words are going to slip my mouth because this is a very, very serious lesson, which I would call why you're fucked. And the thing is that's a pretty hard thing for a student who is 16 and full of hope to hear. And in this lesson, a large part of this lesson is going to be hard to hear. There's going to be parts of this lesson that are going to be very difficult for you to process because I'm going to show you why it is almost impossible for anyone to change. But in walking my kids through that lesson, I found these ounces, these moments where I could give them a glimmer of hope. Because sometimes we have to see the wrong path in order to find the right path. So today, this lesson about why you're fucked is also a glimmer of hope of how we can become unfucked, about how we can find a new way. This is the first lesson I always deliver when I'm talking about story, because it is our belief that if you can't change your story, you can't change anything. And so in order for us to begin this process of change, to find this path of who we were really meant to become, it's going to be through story. And now, coming from a biology teacher, that's a huge leap because I've always taught things as objects and measurables and scientific. Story was very, very far away from me. So it's been a very long journey for me to kind of map this together. So I'm going to ask you to trust me a little bit, walk on this. As a matter of fact, I would even say be a bit cynical. Question what I'm saying, because what I'm about to do today is a magic trick. I'm going to tell you why you're completely unique, but also I'm going to tell you your story. I'm going to tell you how your story is played out and how you got to be here today. No matter where you come from, I'm going to put you right where you are today. And then I'm going to make the bold promise of painting out your picture of like what you want your world to become. And then unfortunately, I also have to tell you why you will not end up getting there. So just sit back. When I ask questions, just kind of answer them in your head and kind of play along with what I'm saying. Let your imagination go with this story and see if it rings true. Because my ultimate goal at the end is that I get you somewhere where you have hope, where you have a vision that there might be another way. Because I've seen that way. I've done that for myself, but I've also worked with hundreds of people, from high school kids to CEOs, from addicts to the most successful people you can imagine who have been addicts. And what I want to show you here is how you can do the same thing too. So let's start with cynicism. Can you trust me? But most importantly, let's start with your story, because that's where your story will always begin.